Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Footed Tackle podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and we're back again for the second last episode of the World Cup coverage. I'm your host, like I said, Ari Stamatakos. I don't know why I've said that twice. I'm just very distracted at the moment because I'm really shiny. I don't know if you can notice that. If you can notice a difference if you're watching on YouTube. Audio listeners, you would have no idea what I'm speaking about, but I look really shiny. I've got no idea why. I haven't changed anything with the lighting. I just look really shiny. So I've tried fixing it. I can't seem to get it fixed. So maybe if I turn the thing on the lighting down, maybe. Is he turning it down or up? I don't know. Maybe. I've just tried to adjust it briefly. Does that make it better? I don't think it does. Change the focus a bit. This is great podcasting content, by the way. This is just real professional stuff. Oh, there we go. It looks slightly less shiny. We'll move. We'll continue. We'll continue. I think, we're fine. We'll be right. Okay, thank you. All right. But thank you for what? I don't know. Yes, we're fine. This should be fine. I look so... Anyway, this should be fine. Yes, we're back again. Second last episode of the proper World Cup coverage. Third last episode of the whole series. It's been a pretty good ride, and we're down to the business end, the business game of the tournament. The World Cup final is on in a couple of days. It's on It's on what is it? The Sunday the 19th. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? Yes, it is. Sunday the 19th Monday the 19th. Monday the 19th of December. We'll be here reviewing the World Cup final, and then probably Tuesday. Actually, we'll go Wednesday. So yeah, the plan will probably be Monday the 19th. We'll be here reviewing the final in itself and the consequences of that. And then probably Wednesday the 21st, we'll be here reviewing the whole World Cup. I don't want to do the final and World Cup review kind of in one. I feel like that's a bit rushed, a bit forced. So I'll do the final preview, like the actual final game preview, or review, I should say, on the 19th, as per regularly scheduled programming. And then I'll do the wrap-up of the whole World Cup on Wednesday the 21st, which I think is a good way of doing it. Okay, that's what we're going to do. But we now know what the final is, and that is, of course, Argentina, who we covered last episode, defeated Croatia 3-0, and, of course, what the second half of the final was going to be decided between France and Morocco. And it is, of course, now decided, or it has been decided, that France will be the team going through to the final, as they defeated Morocco 2-0 in a pretty weird game, I want to say. I wouldn't say it was a exciting game wholeheartedly throughout. A lot of people may disagree with that, but I didn't really think anything of this game in its entirety. I thought France obviously came into that lineup with a slightly different lineup. Of course, Upamecano and Andre Rabiot both were under illness clouds. Both came out of the sides. Ibrahima Konate and Youssouf Fofana came in the respective centre-back and central midfield role. Pretty much a straight swap between those two players. Nothing really needed to change system-wise. Of course, if you look at the defence, if you look at Morocco, they of course had a little bit more of an injury cloud. Of course, Aguaid, still can't pronounce that name. He was toing and froing whether or not he was going to play. I think he was actually in the starting 11, and then was actually taken out of the starting 11, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, they had to reshuffle their whole team. Basically, they went to a five-at-the-back system. That five-at-the-back system changed relatively early on when Raymond Saiss just couldn't play. Just could not play. He just couldn't play. He got subbed off in the 21st minute. And despite being named to play and despite being deemed fit to play, he just could not play. So, he was subbed off for Selim Amala, who came on as a midfielder, and pretty much they went back to their four-at-the-back system, and they just kind of went back to what they've been playing for the longest time. yeah, of course, this was a pretty weird game in terms of the build up. Obviously, a lot of people I still can't get over how shiny I am. A lot of people have a lot of people were kind of looking at this game thinking what could happen. Of course, France in terms of the possible scenarios that could occur from this game. France, of course, were the favourites. France, of course, have probably been arguably the best side throughout the whole tournament. They won their two group games. They beat Australia quite comfortably. They got through Denmark. They lost to Tunisia, but I mean that was a pretty heavily rotated team. You can't really take a lot out of that. They dispatched comfortably of Poland. Yeah, they dispatched comfortably of Poland. They got through the England game in a pretty non-convincing fashion, but they got through it, and they came up against the Morocco side, which would be probably maybe not their hardest test, but probably the easiest banana skin because of the way Morocco have been playing. They of course haven't conceded a goal throughout the whole tournament from open play. Or sorry, they haven't conceded a goal that wasn't an own goal throughout the whole tournament, which is pretty mental to think about. They of course drew the opening game. They drew the opening game. They beat Belgium 2-0. Their one conceded goal that came was the one conceded goal that came was a own goal against Croatia. They beat Spain on penalties after drawing 0-0, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, they got through Portugal 1-0. So they were a side that France couldn't underestimate. They were a side that France were going to have to be at the absolute A game to overcome. And if France gave Morocco a sniff, they were going to take it. And obviously vice versa. If Morocco were slightly off it, if Morocco were 10% off it, then France were going to capitalise. And that's what we saw. That's what we saw pretty early on. Of course, it was a I mean, if we look at the lineups just generally, it was pretty same from both teams, to be honest, apart from the changes that I mentioned. Of course, the first goal comes from a beautiful ball played through to Antoine Griezmann in between the lines. I think it might have been Youssouf Fofana who played that ball, or maybe Chouameni. I'm not quite sure. Or it might have been Koundé. Anyway, the ball gets played through to Griezmann, who gets it into the box, who kind of plays it to Mbappe, who has a shot, and it kind of deflects out the back for Theo Hernandez, who lets it bounce and takes it pretty well on the half volley, gets it past the goalkeeper and scores in a pretty frantic kind of first 5 minutes, which saw Morocco concede their first goal from open play that wasn't an own goal throughout the tournament, and of course concede in the opening 5 minutes, conceding the first half for the first time in the tournament. And really, this was going to be a game of, okay, what can Morocco do now? Because we've seen that they are been able to hold on to leads pretty well. They've been able to hold on to or not hold on to leads, but they've been able to hold teams back pretty well, and they've been able to hold teams' attacking forces down pretty well and not really give them much of a sniff. And then when you look at France, of course, that opening goal comes from a pretty well defended piece of play. They suffocated the numbers in the box. They got around the ball carrier. They blocked the shot. 9 times out of 10, that ball just goes back out to where it came from, and France recycle possession and don't get a clear shot on goal. But I think you can look at this as well as the last goal and think it was a pretty. You can look at this as well as the last goal and think, yeah, it was a pretty a pretty poor. Oh, I wouldn't say poor story, but it was a pretty kind of. This has happened. This is kind of the trend of the game. Morocco getting a little bit unlucky. Of course, Romain Saïss comes off just after the 20th minute mark, which is a little bit disappointing for Morocco. Of course, he was such a crucial player for them, and has been such a crucial player for them for a long time. They have been very reliant on players like him to kind of hold that defensive fort down, and with him in the side, who knows what that second half and the rest of the game could have happened or could have come from, I should say. But apart from that, no real side dominated really up until the latter stages of that first half, where France started to get a little bit more of an ascendancy in the game. Of course, there was that shot from, I can't remember who it was. But there was that shot that Tunisia made, which forced a good save from Hugo Lloris. It might have been, I think it might have been the substitute. It might have been Amala. I think it might have been, I don't know. But of course, it forced a great save from Lloris. Conversely, Giroud gets in behind. Gets in behind. I think it might have been Roman Saiz who gets him. Giroud gets in behind and fires that goal on a half volley, hits the post. So if that's a couple of centimeters to the right, then it could be a different story. But it is one of those things, right? It is one of those things where you kind of take the game by its chances and you take the game by its momentum. France obviously took the lead early on, and that of course did change the psyche of the Moroccan team a little bit. Of course, they didn't. They haven't been behind at all throughout this tournament, so that was the first time they were behind at any stage. It's also a different way of kind of figuring things out, and a different way of it's also a different way of playing, a different way of approaching the game. Something that we aren't familiar with. Something we aren't familiar with. Something we aren't familiar with kind of happening with Morocco, if I can get my words out and I can articulate them properly. We aren't familiar with Morocco playing from behind, and that's a very phrasing. We aren't familiar with Morocco, who are the Moroccan team from a losing position. So it was a little bit of a interesting, especially back into the first half, to see what they were going to do. Maybe offensively, they were forced to make that change, like I said, with Roman Saiz, but that was more forced than tactical. So the first half comes and goes. Morocco didn't have a whole bunch of chances to get back into the game. Morocco didn't have a whole bunch of chances to get back into the game, but it was a pretty calm and pretty composed first half from France, which is something that we haven't really seen from them. Their games have been pretty frantic, pretty hectic, which is which of course is kind of very typical of that French team we've seen. Of course, that the game against Australia was pretty frantic, pretty hectic for the first opening minutes. The Denmark game was a little bit more cagey. The Tunisia game was frantic and hectic. The England game in particular was frantic and hectic. So seeing France kind of control a little bit more of the game, control a little bit more possession, and really suffocate the game is something that we weren't really expecting to see from them. It did come as a little bit of a shock to some people as well as myself. I thought that France would come out of the blocks a little bit more, firing a little bit more of a hectic style of play to try and catch Morocco off guard, but Morocco did well to kind of nullify any of that. And I think the second half kicks off, and Morocco need to get back into the game. They of course make that change at halftime. Mazraoui comes off, who's that right side of fullback for Yahal Atiat Allah. I think I pronounced that right. This basically was just I think the MO of this kind of sub was the MO of this sub was to kind of push back that French defense and kind of push up French defence back and occupy that space in front of Kylian Mbappe, which is something that, of course, England did to a pretty good... not Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele. Sorry, my mistake, wrong side. Hakimi was kind of man-marked Mbappe out of the game, which is pretty good. But to kind of isolate that space in front of Dembele, because they obviously Morocco's MO was get the ball or like dominate the wings and you can get back into the game. That's kind of what they were looking at. So, of course, they found that Mazraoui wasn't having the best of game against Dembele, so they brought on another left back who could potentially exploit Dembele's defensive deficiencies a little bit better, as well as being able to shut him out to a better extent than what Mazraoui did. So that, of course, was a pretty good way of getting back into the game. Of course, Morocco did dominate the best part of the second half. Morocco did dominate the best part of the second half. They were really fluid in the way that they were playing. They made France look second rate at times, which was pretty interesting. But France, of course, did have that whole we're just going to hold on to this lead, and not really allow anyone to kind of get back into not allow anyone to get France back into this game, if that makes sense, and not allow anyone to get to wrestle back momentum. They were very strong in their 50-50 duels. They were very strong with those second balls. They were controlling the tempo of the game, which is something that a lot of people kind of went into this game thinking thinking France would have the lion's share of chances, lion's share of possession, and really dominate the game. But I mean, if we look at the game, of course, Morocco had 61% possession to 39. They had one less expected. Pretty much they had 1.20 less expected goals. But I mean, when the second goal from Kouloumoana is a tap in, you can't really expect anything from that. They had the pretty much same amount of shots on target. France did create a couple more big chances. They both hit the woodwork an equal amount of times. Morocco had more passes, so Morocco did have a lot more of ascendancy in the game and territory, if you were to call it that. I would love to see the kind of. I mean, we can see the average positions here. I can't bring them up because I haven't done my proper preparation, so I can't bring up the average positions, unfortunately. But what we can see here is if you go on the SofaScore app and look at the average positions, we can see kind of a very focused side. We can see a very focused way of playing for Morocco. Focused down that right hand side with Ziyech and Hakimi, two players who didn't necessarily play all that great. I didn't think Ziyech or Hakimi were overly good this game. I thought they could have played a little bit better, which is quite funny because I don't think any of these Moroccan players played overly well, considering that they played a pretty good team game. I thought their centre backs held up pretty well, especially when Kylian Mbappe went centrally. They held up pretty well, which is something which I didn't expect, especially from that slightly slow. I would say slower, but when you think about this Moroccan defence, you don't think about physically capable defenders who can bully strikers and who can outpace strikers. It is more of a kind of getting a job done type defenders. Which when Mbappe went centrally, of course they handled that pretty well. Of course, towards the back end of that game, towards the back end of the game, Morocco did kind of lose ascendancy to it. France did get a little bit more on top, but of course that's where the goal came. There was a blocked shot by Mbappe again, I'm pretty sure. Ball forced to Kouloumoana, who comes on for Ousmane Dembele literally a minute before. I think that was his first touch, and who scores. And it's it's heartbreaking for Morocco. It really is heartbreaking for Morocco. It is one of those things where they battled, they fought all game, but they couldn't. They just weren't able to. They weren't able to get that breakthrough. They weren't able to get that breakthrough. France, of course, saw out the game pretty comfortably after that, and France are through to the World Cup final. You can't really say a whole lot more about it. It is one of those things, right? It is one of those things where you can want the underdog to win, and a lot of people, including myself. Now, I saw this thing rolling around on Twitter. Nick Stav, who is a very good football creator, especially on TikTok, and he's doing some great things with beIN Sport, especially for the World Cup. Clip was of him going around, went viral on Twitter. Viral is a word. Of him saying that he wanted the big dogs. He doesn't really like underdog stories, and I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly, because his rationale was you want to see the big players playing in the best games, and that is exactly what I think. And I think I mentioned this countless times before. I love the elite. I love the elite in football, and because the World Cup comes around once every 4 years, you can't it's once every 4 years. It is a very, very rare thing. So you want the best players with the best legacies playing the best football game you can think of. Like this France-Argentina game is going to be two sides who are going back and forth, end to end, hopefully. Two sides who could definitely cause a shock, and you could definitely win the game in their own right. That to me is what I want football to be. As much as I love the Moroccan story, I adored it. I love the Japan story, the Australian story, even Poland to a certain extent, even Croatia to a certain extent. This World Cup was full of upsets, and I loved it, right? This is why I've titled one of the podcasts, "Is this the best World Cup ever?" Right, I think, anyway. In my opinion, it definitely is. And I love it, I really do, but because it's not every year, like the reason why Leicester winning the league was so good was because it was year after year after year of monotonous. Yeah, we get it. Man City going to win. Yeah, we get it. Chelsea. We get it. United. We get it. Fucking Liverpool, Arsenal are all going to challenge for the league. We get it. Like, it's just monotonous, right? So when you have this injection of Leicester winning the league, it's like, oh my God, how good is this? Whereas with the World Cup, it's slightly different because it's once every 4 years, because it's the pinnacle of sport. It's so there's this excitement of Mbappe versus Messi or Ronaldo versus Messi. This legacy defining game, like a legacy defining game. It is one of those things where you can look at it from different perspectives. I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, those who agree with the point I'm making, or the point Nick was making was that, oh, they agree with the European Super League." That's fucking absurd. Like, that's fucking ridiculous because the European Super League is such a different talking point. Like, whatever. Like, I mean, if you genuinely think that, then you're a fucking idiot. With all due respect. With all due respect, you have no idea what you're speaking about. But it just is a different of how you prefer to watch football. If the World Cup was every year, give me a Morocco in the final. Give me a Senegal making the final. Give me a Japan making the final. Give me those things, please. But it's once every 4 years, and it's the pinnacle of sport. I love the elite playing in the pinnacle of sport. That's why I love Messi versus Ronaldo. I mean, sorry, I don't love the debate, because I think I said last podcast it's the most mundane debate ever. I love the idea of two elite footballers trying to one up each other. That's what I love about football. I love the elite, right? So, of course, once again, it does come down to what you prefer. It's a bit like it is a bit. How you going? It's a bit how you going when you get it when like people can misconstrue your thoughts. But I thought this was quite a poignant to speak on. When it comes to this, when it comes to the Moroccan story, of course, when we look at Morocco, fucking round of applause to them. They played outstanding football throughout the whole tournament. I think the man that I want to speak about more than anyone is Sofran Amrabat. He's a guy that was the outcast of football, really. Was been just an outcast of football for the longest time. Of course, his time in Italy, in most recent times. Of course, he played in Belgium and Netherlands, and he's been floating around a lot of different teams, very middling teams in middling divisions, and for him to show just how good he is on the world stage, playing as this holding midfielder that is just so technically gifted, can pass the ball around for fun, can dictate tempo. He to me was the story for this Moroccan side. Of course, Yusuf El Nesri as well as a player who's kind of announced himself on the world stage. Of course, that goal against Portugal. So it's one of those things where they don't really get the credit that they deserve. They don't really get the plaudits that they potentially deserve. But those who watch the games and those who watch Morocco intensely, and not even intensely, those who just watch the games saw just how good they were, and you have to give them a round of applause. You really have to because they deserve it. They really did deserve it. So this Moroccan side is I don't know what they're going to do in the AFCON next time around. I don't know what they're going to do at the World Cup, but this was definitely a very good story to come out of the World Cup. Goes back to even Croatia 2018. No one really expected them to get this far or that far. 2014, the best thing we had was Colombia. 2010, Ghana, of course. They broke that kind of quarterfinals duck, it seemed. Even the likes of Sweden in 2018 made the quarterfinals. So they got through that quarterfinal duck. They reached the semis, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was a very good story to come out of this World Cup. So you have to just sit back and applaud them. But we'll touch on France when we speak about the final. I'm gonna pause quickly, try and fix the lighting because it's really annoying me. So I don't know if it's any different or if I'm just noticing it more this time. But I'm gonna pause quickly, come back. Hopefully the lighting will be fixed. Okay, all right. Okay. I think we fixed the lighting. Okay, we fixed the lighting. It's slightly better. I look like slightly less shiny. I look like I've gotten out of the shower slightly less. I look more defined, I think. Anyway, all right. That was the break, which I potentially needed because I could feel my voice going slightly. I don't know why. It's not like I've spoken a lot recently. As you could probably tell, it's slightly going. Maybe it's a cold. Hopefully not. But let's go. Let's move on to the final, the preview of the final. Now, We can do this tactically, and I can't be bothered doing it tactically, so we're just going to do it normally. And we're just going to do it we're just going to do it kind of just meh type of way. So what am I saying? Yeah, so let's unpack this. Let's unpack this final. Not tactically, we're just going to unpack this normally. Where do we start here? Now, what obviously the storyline is Messi, right? Messi is the storyline. He will be the storyline throughout this whole. He has been the storyline throughout this whole tournament. Will continue to be the storyline throughout this tournament, and is the player that has taken all the headlines, and he'll be the storyline of this game, no doubt. What you kind of what you can kind of allow, or you can kind of I don't know how to describe what I'm about to say. How you can kind of see this game going, and how you can allow it to kind of comprehend it. Like I don't know how I'm trying to describe this, but how you can allow this game to kind of how you can allow yourself to enjoy this game if you love Messi, or if you love Mbappe, or if you're riding that storyline. That's what I was going to say. How you can allow yourself to enjoy this game is by kind of taking out a little bit of context behind it, and just thinking about it as a game. And because to me, Messi has always been a player that isn't a bottle job, but he isn't clutch. Like he's just a player in big moments. Like he's just a player, right? He doesn't have a history of bottling finals. Yeah, that Barcelona side where they lost to Roma and they lost to Liverpool. Yeah, that wasn't great, but he's also the same player that has won games off his own boot for his country in the past, right? He isn't a player that has been notorious for kind of bottling big games, but also he isn't a clutch player. So what you kind of need to take from this game is you need to look at the performances of the other players for Argentina, and what they're gonna do. Because if we look at the Copa America game, the Copa America final against Brazil, Messi kind of underperformed that game. He was good, but he wasn't exceptional. It was the rest of the team that stood up and got them over the line. Of course, it was Di Maria that got that goal. Of course, it's a pretty different team than what they played with in that Copa America final. Probably be a little bit of a different team. So you got to look at the other players if they're going to step up. You got to look at the likes of Julian Alvarez. You got to look at the likes of Enzo Fernandez, McAllister, De Paul, and Paredes. In particular, that midfield, because I think the defense is pretty solid. I think it's pretty well drilled. And I don't think the French attack is going to surprise them all that much. I think they're going to expect what they're going to... They know what they're going to expect from that French attack. So they just need to look at it from what can they control in that midfield and that forward line? How can they get on top of the game? And how can they start to dominate? Now, when you look at it from a French perspective, they're just going to have to go back and do what they're doing. Go back and just keep doing what they're doing. Because they've got the ability to beat any team on any given day. Granted, I don't think they're that good. I don't know how they got to the final, to be honest. But I do think that the French team at their best beats any team in the world, obviously. So they've been here before, they've done it before. So they need to kind of just draw on that past experience. Of course, it's a very similar team. I wouldn't say very similar team, actually. It's quite different. But if you want to compare it to the team that made the final 2014 for Argentina, I think Messi's the only surviving player, I think, from that team. So, and maybe Otamendi, maybe. But you can't really take anything out of it from that perspective. So you got to draw all the experience that you've got. Giroud's still there, Dembele's still there, Mbappe's still there, Griezmann's still there, Lloris is still there. So they've got a lot of players who are still there from that team and who can draw off that experience of what they were able to do in that game, where they didn't dominate the game. Croatia dominated that final in 2018, but they got the job done through just sheer individual talent and individual brilliance. So they need to draw off that experience, and they need to draw off that winning mentality that they have. Now, that is when you look at it from both teams' perspectives. Now, let's look at it from a Messi versus Mbappe perspective. And let's look at it from the story that's going to come out of this game, because when you look at it, and when you kind of try and consume it, it's going to be one of the biggest football games of all time. It's arguably, in my opinion, I genuinely think if Messi wins this game, he retires from football. I think he just retires from football. I don't think he's going to announce a pre-game. I think he might have announced that he's internationally retiring, but I think if he wins this game, he retires from football, because what else is there left for him to achieve? What else is there left for him to achieve? In my opinion, I think the GOAT debate is there, but was there. I think this tournament has proven to me and proven to everyone that there is no debate anymore. But to kind of finalise that, Messi needs to win it. If Messi wins it, he's the greatest footballer of all time, undisputed fact. Undisputed fact. When you look at career and footballing ability, undisputed fact. So there's a lot riding on it for him. There is a lot riding on it for him. A lot riding on it for him. And whether or not he'll be able to live up to those expectations, who knows? Because waiting in the wings is this 23-year-old footballing marvel who's already got one World Cup to his name and has already got 9 World Cup goals. Of course, I'm talking about Kylian Mbappe. And it depends on what story the football gods have. Do they have the icon of the game, the legend of the game, going down on his back and, to use a wrestling term, putting over the younger star? Is that the story that they've got? Do they have the story of Messi riding off into the international sunset, passing the torch over to Kylian Mbappe and say, here you go, become the greatest footballer of all time type thing? Because with 2 World Cups to his name at 23 years old, you'd assume he'd gather at least 4 Ballon d'Ors in his career. It'd be hard to dispute that he's going to be the greatest footballer of all time in the near future. Is that the story that they've got? Or is it the man who has had this elusive kind of, who's had this aura and this kind of thing hanging over him for the longest time about and like kind of masking his career and kind of not allowing his career to be fulfilled? Is this the time where that demon is conquered and Messi becomes the greatest footballer of all time by getting that elusive trophy that has evaded him his whole life, his whole career? Who knows? It depends on whether or not the footballing gods want to be cruel or want to be kind. Funnily enough, it's cruel or kind regardless of the result, depending on who you back. But it's gonna be a fascinating game, absolutely fascinating game. And I've got 2 people behind me as if they're here. Of course, the 2 people behind me here who have 2 people on the wall, I should say, who have had their time in the sunset or time in the limelight in World Cups, in World Cup finals, and times in the mud in World Cup finals. Of course, 98 with Zidane. 98 with Zidane kind of proved to be his crowning moment. Won the final, scored 2 goals maybe, or definitely scored 1. Man of the match, great performance. Conversely, that same game, Ronaldo, we of course all know what happened with him. Came out, probably shouldn't have played, disaster class of a performance. 4 years later, Ronaldo avenges that. Ronaldo avenges that kind of that heartbreak from '98. 2 scoring a brace in the final against Germany, and then 4 years after that, Zidane's career ends in disgrace. So the greatest players of all time have had these moments. Of course, when you look at Messi's direct comparison in Diego Maradona, had his moment in '86, and then I think it was '94, maybe, where he gets done for the substance, or maybe '90. I don't know. I think it was USA '94 that happened. They all the greatest players do. The greatest players have these moments, and Messi's had his moment in 2014. But we all know that commentary for that last free kick, by Peter Jury. That's probably the most used clip, ever. Especially within football circles. Realistically, that wasn't his fault, but he was probably going to blame it on himself. So he's had that heartbreak in 2014. Is it time for him to have this success in 2022? Who knows? And then you have Mbappe, who's, speaking of Messi, still, he's gone on this villain arc, and maybe this is the one thing that he's needed. He's been nice. He's been the nice guy, especially in comparison to Ronaldo. But for the longest time, he's been the nice guy. So, can this slight villain arc that Messi has gone on, can this carry him all the way to success? And is this the thing that he's been missing for the longest time? This cutting edge, this prickish nature about him. Who knows? And then of course you have Mbappe, who just shows no emotion. And will want to break hearts. And Mbappe will want to break hearts, because I think every neutral fan in the world is Argentina. I like to assume anyway. Especially unless you're a French supporter or bloody Ronaldo. It is one of those things, isn't it? It is one of those things. Or Brazilian, of course. If I think it's time to give my prediction, I've already said who's going to win it. I think it's going to go to extra time. And I think it's going to be 3-1 Argentina after extra time. And Messi's going to score a brace. Messi's going to score a brace in extra time to win Argentina the World Cup. Their first World Cup since 1986. That's my prediction. Okay. I guess I'll see you in 4 days' time. I guess I'll speak again in 4 days' time. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Leave your predictions in the comments below. Who do you think this Messi story will see itself out, and do you think this Messi story will come to a grand crescendo, or will it end in heartbreak? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the 2 Foot Tackle Podcast on YouTube. 2 Foot Tackle Podcast YouTube channel. Like, notification bell. Do all that good stuff. It would mean, yeah. And I know also all the socials as well. Would mean the world. Thank you for watching. See you guys in 4 days. It's going to be a good final. See you guys. Goodbye.